Welcome back to the last video in the estimation portion of this series. So far, we have covered retrieving our materials and creating the user interface. In this video, we're going to be exporting our estimation data to an Excel XML format. Let's continue our journey and get into this. To wrap up estimation, we need to start with the Excel export. When exporting to Excel XML, there's a lot of specific text that we have to include, make sure that our file is readable by Excel. This can introduce human error. So let's go ahead and create a utility class that will help reduce that human error. First, we want to click our project, say add, new folder. We will call this utils. Then on the utils folder, we'll say add, new item, and we will call this class to be Excel util. You could also call it Excel helper if you choose. So this will be a public static class, and the main point of this class is to take care of writing the Excel cells for us. So we'll go ahead, we will want to add a new method. So we'll say public static string create cell. This is going to take in two things. It's going to take in a string of tabs. It's also going to take in an object called value. So the string of tabs is going to be there so that way we can have a nicely formatted XML document. So there are two things that we need to first figure out about this object value. First, we need to figure out what the data type is, and then what the actual value that we'll be serializing to Excel XML is. So for the first thing, we'll check, we'll say if value is int or value is double or value is long, and then we also need to check for float, or the value is a float. So all this is basically saying, hey, if we have a numerical value, right? For that, we also need to add a string. This is going to be value type. So when we have a numerical value in Excel XML, the value type is equal to number. Okay. Else if the value is a string, the value type is set to string. Else if value is Boolean, value type is equal to Boolean. Okay, so now we have our value type set up. We're good to go there. Now, the only time that our actual value to be serialized is any different than the value that it is if it's a Boolean value. So what we can do here is we'll create another string up top. This will be actual value. And then we'll just say down here is if value is bool, and let's just go ahead and call this bool b. We'll say that actual value is equal to 1 or 0. Sorry, and I should have put that in double quotes. So it's saying if the Boolean is true, then we write a 1, otherwise we write a 0. And we'll go ahead and we'll say else actual value equal to value dot toString. Alright, so we have both our values set up. So now all we have to do is return out of here. And we will be using a combination of a string interpolation and string literal. So we'll say return our new string. So the very first thing we'll do is we'll want to put tabs out in front. Then we will say cell data SS type equals, so double tick, so well, 2 double ticks, that way we can escape it. And then we will say value type, another double tick, and we want our actual value. Then we need to close our data cell and close our cell. And then we just need to add a environment.newline. Perfect. Now that we have our Excel utility class fleshed out, now we need to think about how we're actually going to be processing our data. So currently we have 5 different types that we have estimated. However, we need a way to be able to treat them as one class. So if we go back to our models and we say add new item, let's create a new interface called estimation item. So by using an interface, we can take our 5 different classes and ultimately treat them as one object. So instead of a class, we'll say interface. So this interface will have 2 methods. First one will be a string called create Excel header. We'll take in a string of tabs. And then the second will be a string called create Excel row. And it'll also take in a string of tabs. Alright, now that we have our interface created, we now need to implement this. So if we go to our estimation member, and we'll say that estimation member implements estimation item. Now if we control dot, we can tell it to implement our interface for us. So we can delete out this exception here, and we'll say string builder SB equals new string builder. So the reason why we want to use a string builder is because we will be concatenating several strings together, and strings are immutable, so it is more efficient if we use a string builder class. So then we'll say sb.append, then we'll say Excel util.create cell. We'll send in the tabs, and we'll also send in the name of section size. So the reason why we're using name of operator is because it turns our property's name into a string version of it. So if you wanted to call section size like section space size, you could just send in a string of that. And then we'll just copy this, paste it a few times. So here we have length, count, and cost. And then we'll just say return sb.toString. Alright, perfect. Now all we need to do is copy, paste this into our row, but instead of the name of operator, we want the actual values. So if you just hold down Alt and drag your mouse, you can do a selection over rows and say delete. We just have to get rid of one of these parens. And now we have our Excel row also implemented. So I want you to go ahead and take the time and do this for the other classes, and I'll see you in just another minute. Alright, welcome back. So I've gone ahead and I've filled out the other classes. Let's go ahead and check out what I've done. So if we look at our angle class, we can see that we have our header created just like our member, and we have our row that reflects our header. Same thing with the bolt here. Same with our plate. And same with our welds. Now that we have all of our estimation methods filled out, let's go back to our estimation.xaml.cs. Now at the bottom of the class, let's go ahead and add a new method called private string create worksheet. And this will take in a list of estimation item. Call this items. So we're gonna want to create another string builder object. We are going to want to create an integer called tab count. I'll initialize that to 0. And then we'll say sb.append. We're going to do the same interpolation and string literal again. Alright. And now we will say worksheet ss name equals. Alright. So I did leave one thing out of the method signature. We need to go back and we need to say string name. We'll say name. Okay. And now we'll say sb.append. And then we'll say another string literal and interpolation. This time we'll say new string. And a string actually has a constructor that'll take in an integer and a char. So we will say that chars that, and then we'll say plus plus tab count. So the plus plus before just means increment our value before we use it. Table. Now at this point we'll also create a string called tabs. We'll say this is equal to new string tab count plus 2. And so from here we'll say sb.append. We'll say new string this will be plus plus tab count. This will be a row. And then we'll say sb.append items sub-0 create Excel header. We'll pass in the tabs. And then we'll say sb.append new string and we'll say tab count, and then this will be closing of our row. Alright, so let's just go over this post-mortem a little bit. So here we want to increment our tabs again. Here we don't need to increment our tabs because we already have that saved in this value here. And when we close this row, since we've already incremented to our row level here, we are good to go. So now we need to add all the rest of our rows. So I'm going to say for each estimation item in items, we'll want to basically copy this. We can get rid of our tab count there because we're already at the level that we want. Instead of item sub-0, we'll say item. And instead of create header, it would be create Excel row. So we'll add a row, add our item, then add the close row. Okay. So now that we've finished out our table, we need to close out our table. So say sb.append And then we'll say new string. And we'll say our tab character. We'll say minus minus tab count. We'll do a close table. And we just copy this, paste it, and we can say worksheet. And then we'll just want to return our sb.toString. Alright, so here we go. We got our create worksheet. Now we just need to add the method that will call it. So here we'll say private void create Excel doc. All right. We're going to want another string builder. Now this is where we start using a lot of very specific text. I suggest copy and pasting this next part from the video description below. Alright, now we'll want to create all our different worksheets. So now we'll say sb.append create worksheet. From here we'll say members.cast say I estimation item to list members. Go ahead, we'll want to do this per our 5 types. So members, plates, angles, welds, and bolts. Alright, now we just need to close out our workbook. So say sb.append. There we go. So close out workbook. Alright. So WPF doesn't have a save file dialog natively built in. So if we say Microsoft.win32.save file dialog, I want to call this SVD, SFD is equal to new save file dialog. So if sfd.show dialog equals true, system.io.file.write all text, the path will be sfd.file name, and then this will be sb.toString. Alright, so that concludes all the exportation. Now all we'll want to do is copy our Excel doc, create Excel doc method name. And we'll go back to our UI and let's add our estimation button. So if you recall, in the UI we created this 3rd row down here. So let's go ahead and add a button to that. So scroll all the way down to the bottom underneath of our scroll viewer. We'll say button grid.row is equal to 2. Content will be equal to export x name will be equal to export btn. Click will be that method that we created and that we copied, and then we'll close it. So then let's just do a few UI things. We'll say width is equal to 80. We'll say horizontal alignment is equal to right. Let's give it a margin of 10 pixels. Alright, perfect. So if we go ahead, make sure we're running 64-bit, and we'll say start. Oh, not successful. I know what I did wrong. So we can't just use that method name. I apologize. So I'll say equals new event handler. Then in that event handler, we'll just call create Excel doc, because we forgot that in the method signature you have to have an object sender and a routed event args for the mouse click event. So now we'll go ahead and say start. All right, so let's go ahead, select a job, say get data, then we'll click our export. Let's go ahead and just save this to my computer's temp folder. Save. And then if we open up Excel, then we'll say open from this PC. I'll browse, go to my temp folder. All right, so as you can see, we now have our Excel data. So we have our members, we have our plates, angles, welds, and bolts.
Well, there you go. We have completed the estimation portion of our application, from extracting data from SDS2 to exporting it to Excel. In the next section, we will be covering the drawing. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye.